Okay, well, hi, my name is Josephine Scott. I go by Josie. I run the simulation lab at Metro Technology Centers in Oklahoma City. And we have been doing what we call a hospital day for, I guess it's been about 15 years now. The last 5 years, we actually have started partnering with our local emergency response systems to make it more of a shared learning experience for them as well as for us. So we have turned it into more of a mass casualty experience. The objectives that I'm going to kind of talk about today is how we're facilitating the student knowledge transfer from classroom to practice, our engagement of students and partners from multiple disciplines and organizations, the reinforcement of interprofessional communication and collaboration, and recognizing the available resources that are out there. So if you want to do this, it's a very big possibility for you to do this. I know I'm in health, but there's nothing that says that any of the industries that you guys work in that you can't do some type of emergency plan or reaction to what would happen at that facility wherever they would work. So it's a great way to get that hands-on experience, especially in the world today when you never know what's going to come tomorrow. And then identify possible challenges to implementing this type of simulation. Because as you know, once you start doing something, you kind of start finding those issues that are out there. I'm going to show a quick video of our presentation, and hopefully I can get the sound to work for you.
What did she say? Yeah. What? She said trouble.
Blood pressure 118 over 80.
All right.
Respirations at about 40.
Okay.
We have gunshot wound to the right upper chest. We have no other complaints at this time.
Signs of attention pneumo with this. We're going to need a chest tube on this guy. Let's get that scat. He's allergic to morphine. X-ray getting ready. So let's get some chest X-ray ready for this guy. I'm going to need a portable X-ray.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, we need one
don't want to get anyone's way.
Innovation. Rachel, your blood sugar 72.
Alright, he can breathe. Chest raise. Chest raise on its way. Alright. Did he get on? Teacher said.
I got it.
Through. Let's get a new dressing on that. Let's clean that up. Let's get vital signs on her. You've got an IV here.
Successfully his body. He's not going to be for all his
Yeah.
He's the best husband ever, the best daddy. 55-year-old male post-appendectomy.
Okay.
I know, I'm introducing this guy. It's no
Okay.
Okay, that video, can everybody hear me again? I see nods, okay. That video was actually created in 2017 with our partnership with the fire department and the police department when we did our mass casualty that year. That scenario was based on basically a drive-by shooting of the school bus. So we partnered with our local fire department that would actually come to our school as well as the police department to put on that scenario, as well as our paramedics, the IMSA. The reason for that partnership is because it gave our students some more of that real life hands-on experience that they would have in emergency response. So what happened outside was really training for the fire department and for police department and IMSA. So not only did we get training on that, they did as well. And I will talk later on in the presentation what we all learned from doing this kind of scenario. Now, our hospital was our health career center building. By converting it into a hospital, we had emergency rooms for our practical nursing students. We had our surgery for our surge tech students. We had our radiography students running our x-ray and our portable x-ray. Now, those were our kind of our adult programs. Our high school programs were our AUAs in our ERs. We had nursing assistant students that were doing our transportation. So we're going to kind of talk about all those kind of different moving parts that we had in this exercise. So first, you know, I don't know if you guys have heard of multidisciplinary training and interprofessional training. And a couple of years ago, I'm like, what's the big difference between the two? And so I kind of did some research on that. And multidisciplinary is basically just combining several different disciplines and bringing them together to approach that topic, which, okay, that's kind of what we did in this scenario. But to make it interprofessional, you actually have to have them working collaboratively on the quality of care. So we actually have moved from year to year from just multidisciplinary, where you're in your own little silos, but you're interacting with each other, to actual interprofessional, where we have to learn from each other. And some of the things that we've kind of learned over the years, when we first started, we each had our own scenarios. They may have interacted a little bit, but not really drastically. So we weren't bringing all those components together. We all had our own little silos as we were learning. So in 2017, when we did this one, we made a pact to let's make this interprofessional. Let's learn from each other. So we ended up having more interactions amongst each division. So we even had our MetroTech emergency response team involved. So while this emergency was happening at our school, our emergency response was taking it as if it really happened. So they activated all of our emergency response team and they had to act out each of their roles, like student reunification, where to find parents, information for the parents, have a media call in or show up, what happens at the scene of the incident. When that happens, how is your school going to take care of it? And then, of course, they had to create that incident command with our police department, fire department, and even the EMSA. So they got that hands-on experience running a mass casualty from our school that they wouldn't have. We do tabletops for our emergency response, but not really a live action, let's have a incident command with other entities that we would be involved with. So this exercise not only was for our health students, it really worked for all of MetroTech for that incident command. And then, of course, our police worked with the fire worked with EMSA. And then with that, the EMSA paramedics brought those students into our ER. Our students had to learn how to get that report from the paramedics. They don't have time to sit around and take their time to give a report. They've got to give that and then move on. So we kind of keep moving in that respect. And then we also had our health career students that had to demonstrate that teamwork skill and the communication. So we had to teach them, you're going to pick up a student. How are they going to transport this patient? Was it by gurney? Was it by wheelchair? And then transport them either to surgery or to x-ray. So each part was a moving part. There wasn't anything that didn't go from one end of our hospital to the next. We always had people moving. You do see on this, we have our medical assisting and our dental assisting. They are kind of removed from this mass casualty because they were in a different building. Because of that, they still got victims, but like in real life, it would be a dental clinic or it'd be a medical clinic. So those patients would walk or take themselves to those clinics. So we still had scenarios that interacted with them, but they didn't so much interact with the hospital. Each year as we do this, one of the things that we've tried to include is maybe getting them more involved in our mass casualty and maybe having somebody have to come to the hospital. So this is kind of how we've kind of made it more of a learning experience for all of our people by interacting with each other. So in our scenario, in 2017, we had Oklahoma City Fire Department Station 18, our Oklahoma City Police Department Spring Lake Division, our EMSA paramedics, the Regional Medical Response System, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit, the Medical Emergency Response Center, MetroTech Emergency Response Team, and even Homeland Security, the OSSI, Oklahoma School Security Institute, was a part of this mass casualty. All of them are the partners that we have brought on board to do this mass casualty, because we didn't want to do it to not be realistic. We wanted to be as realistic as possible. So we brought all of these people on board to give a more lifelike simulation for our students. Then our programs at MetroTech that were involved were our practical nursing, our surgical technology, our radiologic technology, our health career certification, CNA and the AUAs, our medical assisting, our medical office. And additional this past year, we actually added vision care because we just started that program. So she got to participate this year. Our National Guard came on board, the Army as well, and Air Force. And you're like, how do they interpret into all of this? And as I go, I'm going to talk about each entity and what they provided for us to show you the kind of partnership that we have built with each one of these entities. So if you're wondering what kind of scenarios did we have, just to kind of run through, I'm not going to go through every one 100%, but we had all kinds of gunshot wounds, external extremity injuries, lacerations, dislocations, fractures, head traumas, eye penetrating wounds, because we had the vision, so we had to have something there, broken teeth for our dental, hypoglycemic episodes, low blood sugar. And then we also had walk-ins, because if any of you know, if a mass casualty happens in real life, that hospital isn't shutting down. They're also going to have walk-ins to the hospital. So we had to implement that aspect of the scenario as well. So the students had to learn how to prioritize their care and then also do that triage. because yeah, the outside in the emergency response, your paramedics and your firefighters are triaging, but how are we going to triage in the medical facility? So we had other things coming in, so they may have to choose which one takes priority. And then we also had surgical patients, because in a everyday hospital, you have those non-elective or non-emergent procedures that are being done. What happens to those if an emergency happens? So we kind of added that component so students will learn what would happen in the hospital during a situation like this. Because pretty much in our building, everybody has that potential of working in a hospital. Our surge tech students, our rad tech students, our nursing students, even our AUAs from our high school programs. So it was really important for them to get the feel. So the first time they're exposed to this, hopefully it would not be during a real event. So our practical nursing, what all did they do during this event? Like I said, they ran our ERs, but we end up having about 40 to 50 practical nursing students. I don't know about how other programs run, but we have a class that starts in August, and then we have a class that starts later on in October this next year to be January. So where they're not all in the same place. So our nursing students are the nurses in the ER, or they're going to be patients, or they're AUAs. So they can take up several different roles during this scenario. So some of them are patients. And what's good about that is they get to see how they are, how other people treat them as a patient. So maybe they learn what it feels like to be a patient. As you can see in this picture here, she is actually getting report from the paramedics. I do have a little bit of a video here. Let me try and see if it'll let me play as well. Whoops, and that hit the wrong button. Hang on a second, let me go back to that. Okay.
Minor neurological stuff.
I'm going to back it up so you guys can hear it from the start.
There's that bandaging is supposed to be actually what looks like injury, but also that's ministry of seizure, she had multiple houses, she's able to tell you that she's a little bit foggy, some minor neurological stuff that she explains it to myself anyway. That's about all I got for you. The grades are over here, two of them, they can tell you what's going on.
I don't know how well you guys could hear that. It's kind of low on the computer. It works better when you're on a big presentation. But part of that is his report to her and how quickly he went through that. So students have to be on the ball when they're getting those reports and be paying attention, or they're going to miss critical and vital information. So it's really important for them to learn that here in this role as a student than the first time they're exposed to this out in real life. So not only are our nursing students are doing assessments, they're passing meds, they're doing oxygen. This year, we actually added some components where they could start IVs or draw blood. So they're actually using their skills while they're doing this as well. Surgical technology, as you can see in this picture, they're actually doing surgery. We have been lucky that we have gotten surgeons in that will actually do surgery on pigs. We get the dissecting pigs, so that way they can actually run through what it would be like to set up our real surgery. In 2017, 18, and 19, we were able to get a neurosurgeon in, and he would do brain surgeries, and they would be working on that prior to the emergency happening. So not only do they have that issue going on, but they have the fact that they've got a surgery, mid-surgery emergency response team gets called out. So they've got to finish that surgery and get ready for emergency preparedness. I keep seeing that you guys have some chat questions up here, but since I'm in the PowerPoint, it will not let me chat. So what questions do you guys have before I move on to the next slide? Anybody have questions?
I think most of the stuff in the chat is just kind of complimenting you on the information that you've put together, and that everybody is really enjoying what you have, and just that it's a great idea, and potentially could be a great idea for in-person OEIP event in the future.
Well, thank you, because like I said, I couldn't see what the chat was, and I didn't want to miss something that somebody was asking about. But yeah, with our surgery, so it's kind of a live surgery, and we get videos of this, so they have stuff to share as well. This year, we have a new surge tech instructor, and she was a little not sure, how am I going to participate in this? How are my students going to do this? Because this was new for her. And the thing that she came back with is that she loved the fact that we did this right before her students went to clinical. And so they really got to practice that sterile technique of setting up a preparedness for a surgery. They practice that every day in the lab. However, during this, it became more of a live, we're doing this for real type of situation. So it gave them that aha moments of, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to be so quick when we do this? So it really helped those students kind of step up and be ready to get to clinical and go out there in the hospital. Our radiologic technologists, we actually have x-rays down in their classroom, but we also have the portable. So students were able to take that portable down to our ERs and do the x-rays like they would in real life, and have to suit up if they had to wear their, I can't think of what the name of it, their lead aprons to take the pictures. Not only did we have them going into the ERs, there were certain scenarios in the past in which they would go to the surgery and take x-rays. So they would have to gown up and go into an x-ray room or OR room to take an x-ray there and keep things as sterile as possible. So those are just different components that we could add with the emergency preparedness radiological technology. Our health career certification, our CNAs, they acted as our transporters. We also had in the morning session, we would have them taking care of a long-term care unit where we would have a patient crash. And then at the end of the day, we would do the same thing. This year, we modified it a little bit. So as transporters, as they're going down the hallway, one of their patients crashed. We did that so that these students get more of that hands-on. What would happen if that patient did go down in front of you? What would you do in that situation? And then our paramedics are awesome that we work with. They actually will take the time, as you see in the second picture, and make every student do compressions so that way they can learn from their CPR training that they've had to do it more accurately in a crisis situation, because we all learn how to do it in a CPR class and it's no stress, it's just laid back, let's do it. In this situation, you've got people watching, standing over you, even acting out, oh my God, that's my loved one. You got to save him, giving them that extra component as they're doing this scenario. And then our AUAs, or our high school PN Select, and our high school PN Select, let me explain that class just a little bit to you. It's a early practical nursing class. They get to take part of the PN program their senior year. When they complete that, they transition into our practical nursing program, adult side, the second year of the program. So these students are acting as our AUAs. They're in there taking the vital signs. They are drawing blood. They don't stick the people live, but we have devices that the patients get to put on their arms. We use them this year, in which they put the device on their arm and they can draw blood from that. So that way they have to actually talk to the patient, put a tourniquet on, and draw blood. It gave it more of a realism this year than having an arm across the room that they would go draw on. They still have to interact with that patient as they're doing that drawing. So that kind of added that component this year. We also had task trainers for UAs and urine cultures that they would have to draw. So it's not just going in there taking vital signs, they're actually doing skills that they've learned in their curriculum. And some of the students were high school programs. You know that they come morning and then they come afternoon. Some students asked if they could be there all day. If it worked out with their school, they came and spent the entire day with us while we're doing this scenario. And we kind of leave that open to the student because every student's school is a little bit different. So we don't mandate it because we don't know what they're doing at their home school, but we do offer that as an option if it can be worked out. Our medical assisting. Now our medical assisting is housed into another building, or it has been up until this coming year. They're moving back into our building. So we had patients actually go over to them, the ankles or the extremities or something like that. So that way they still got to see some of the victims. It just wouldn't be the mass casualty hospital scenarios, but they still got inundated with patients because instead of going to the ER, they went to their local clinic to get taken care of. This year we tried a scenario and it didn't quite work like we wanted to, where they had a heart attack and our paramedics were supposed to go pick them up. But with us trying to set up for the moulage, we didn't get a paramedic over there to pick up that patient. But it's one of those things, again, every year we're adding more to our scenarios to make it bigger and better and to find the kinks that aren't working. Now that they're going to be in our building this year, we'll be able to do that scenario even better because we don't have to send them across campus to go get somebody. So we're looking forward to adding even more components to our medical assisting this next year. And then what is the RM? Our Regional Medical Response System, or our MERC, that's the communication system that is used for the state of Oklahoma. We actually have, we're lucky that just a couple of miles from our school is the underground bunker in which all that communication takes place. And since we've partnered with them, some of our students actually go over there for the day and they're running the communication system just like it would in an emergency response. So that we send students over there to run their MERC, the communication, their phone lines, and then we have students in each one of our units being that MERC representative. So they would call from the underground bunker to that hospital to find out how many beds do we have available, how many green, red, yellow victims can they take in that ER, and have to have that communication. So they're not learning just what happens in their one little unit, they're actually seeing what the state of Oklahoma is doing in the emergency response system. So that partnership that we have created with them has been astronomical in giving experience to our students. And then for the last couple of years, our biomed students haven't gotten to participate, but they used to be in our building until they moved them to a building of their own. But while they were there, we had them actually as interns because a lot of these students are going on to college. They want science-based learning. So if they were interested in maybe being a doctor, we made them interns. And we actually had a physician come in and go with them on rounds to the different units to kind of give those students an idea of what would happen if you actually were a medical student. And how would that look in a situation like this? We had other of the biomedical students running our pulmonary or echocardiogram lab. They actually ran tests. So as patients needed an echo or an EKG, we sent them to that lab to have things done. So there's all kinds of things that you can implement depending on what programs you have in your school. You just have to kind of think outside that box of where can we pull that group in and what can they do to still utilize the stuff that they're learning. Public Safety Academy, they actually moved across town, so we don't get the benefit of them like we used to, but they would come in. They've been our hospital security during the exercise before going around. And as you can tell in the first picture, this is our one of our secretaries that has retired. She'd go around kind of like being that, I'm mad and I'm angry, so they have to subdue her without a lot of physical force. So that's teaching these students on how to do that, especially with an older adult. Or we would do prisoner transport. What would it be like to have to be, working in the jail and coming with a prisoner to the hospital? So it kind of shows them what that would be like. During our mass casualty shooting scenarios, they worked with some of our local police departments on how to clear a building. So there's all kinds of ways we can implement even non-healthcare programs into a mass casualty. Our dental assisting, when we still had the program, we would send victims over to them. Now, because we wouldn't have a lot of dental injuries, it would be a day that they would actually bring in other patients. So it was kind of like an active dental clinic, and then they had to bring in these emergency patients in between those other appointments. So kind of giving them more of a realistic feel of what would it be like if you did have victims that were starting to come into you for similar issues. Our health career certification pharmacy tech, as you can tell, they ran a pharmacy. We would actually, as we discharge patients, they would go to the pharmacy and have to have a prescription filled. So they had candy in which they would actually put together a prescription bottle and have to fill a prescription for students. So that was one of the other things that we have done with some of our health career certifications, depending on what programs do we have that year and what do we need to do with them. I thought I had some more pictures in here, but debriefing is one of the things afterwards that's very important for us to include. And part of that we've learned are several things. Each department and entity need to be able to debrief separately, because we debrief as a big group all at once, but each department has their own communication issues that they may have had or other issues that they had. So we want to have them debrief, break down what happened in that day in their unit, and then we're going to come together and have a big debriefing time together. That is very important to learn, basically, so we can improve each year on what we're doing. And then meet with each key person from each department at the end to basically, what can we do better? Where's our opportunities for improvement? But what are we doing good as well? Because we want to continue what we're doing good, but then improve upon the stuff that we need to. Now, I use, as you can tell in the picture, a lot of plus deltas, because with a large group, that is something you can do very easily to find out what's going on. And we'll talk about some of these things written on here. What the students stated they learned. Utilizing the triage tags. The picture that you see is a triage tag. When they get to the hospital, we were finding that these triage tags no longer stayed with the patients, and they're not realizing that they have to stay with that patient until we link that number from that tag to that patient in their chart, because that is actually linked to the emergency response system. Because when they're transferred from the ground zero area, that's the number they're going by. So they're trying to track that number on what hospital did they go to, who is the name to that number. So if we need to track a family member, we're able to do that by that number. From this is what they were at the site, this is what hospital they're at and where they're at now. So learning how to use those triage tags became very important. And it's something each year we're getting better, but it's still not perfect. They're learning that teamwork is important. It's no longer you're on your own. You've got to work together to make all of this work. Clarity and communication. That if you're not understanding what the doctor is telling you or not understanding what is being said, that you need to stop and get that clarification, because if you do the wrong test, it's going to take longer to get that patient taken care of. So that clarity of communication, they've learned that that's very important. Don't think that you know what they said. You need to know what they said. Some of them that were actually patients said they now know what it's like to be in patient shoes. We've used some of IMSA's paramedic students before as our patients, and their comment was, I never really thought about when you're in the ambulance and they're just working on you, you're sitting there going, what's going on? What are they doing? And the paramedic student was like, I get it now, that when they're in there, we still need to tell them what we're doing and what's going on, because they're scared. And if we don't communicate that to the patient that's on that stretcher, then we're just making things worse for them. So students have learned what it's like to be in those patients' shoes. Nursing students having to learn to quickly take notes from paramedics and doctors. During one of the debriefing sessions, and most of you, if you're in healthcare, you may find this a little funny, is one of the nursing students asked, well, could the paramedics give us a written report? It's like, in a mass casualty, that's not quite possible. You're going to have to be on your toes and be taking notes. So they're learning that, oh, not everything is just handed to us computerized in a situation like this. So it's been a big eye-opening experience, and I'm glad they're learning it here and not in a real situation. Gaining experience in mass casualty situations. Is ours perfect? No way. but it's an eye-opening experience for them. And hopefully if they ever have to be experienced to this in their lifetime, they have a little bit of knowledge to take into there with them. And again, our students say the need to take faster report from the paramedics. When they're rattling off, the paramedics get 60 seconds to rattle something off to them. And if they don't get it down, they're lost. And that was one of the things that each year, each students are telling us that, but we know it's something that they're having to learn. Just some of the comments that we've had, I learned the importance of time management and multitasking. I thought it was good that while under all the stress and pressure that we all worked well together, I also liked the instructors were helpful and not judgmental during this process. Teamwork is key, working with great team members, get the job done. There are critical thinking processes in organization that are key to having things run better. And these are all things stated from students. And I learned that what I've learned in the class setting has stuck and knew what I was doing. So that kind of was like, great. They feel that what they're learning is important and they're getting it. So some of the challenges that our students had talked about: not having control of the situation, need to prepare myself better. We give them scenarios and tell them this is what you need to be prepared for tomorrow, but until they're immersed into it, they don't get what they're doing. They're kind of like, you told us, but we didn't get it. So this kind of gives them that, again, life scenarios. Lack of communication and knowing who to get help from if I had any questions. Taking care of all patients in a timely manner. Working understaffed. If a student called in for the day, we didn't replace them. They worked short. So we wanted them to realize what it was going to be like if all of a sudden you call in for your shift, what's going to happen to your other teammates on those teams. Trying to fill out paperwork while taking care of more than one patient at the same time. Yeah, they've got a lot to learn when it comes to that, because that's going to be a lifetime of working. But it opened their eyes to, oh my gosh, I've got to get better at this paperwork. The MetroCare emergency response, some of the things they said that they've learned, having to designate exercise auditors to help ID positive and negatives. As we were doing things during this response, we found holes in our own emergency response thing that we thought we had covered by tabletop, but then realizing, oh, what are we going to do with this situation? Better communication between our EOC and the student parent reunification. That way they know what's going on between the two. Increased parent reunification members consider counselors. This wasn't a school-wide mass casualty type thing. This was just doing our health career centers and our volunteers. So learning in this small community on, ooh, we don't have enough people in that room was a big eye-opening for them. So that was great. Improved student tracking. Where are our students going? Did they go to the hospital? Did they go to the parent reunification center? So they learned that. Consider another communication channel for offsite student issues. Change recorded main call and message to address emergency. Create a frontline script for receptionists to use during the crisis. Then ensure that enough landline phones are available, because we had people actually call in as part of their scenario, asking what's going on, what happened to my kid, or they would show up, where is my kid? And so that way it really put a stress onto our school on what would happen in a real crisis. So not only did our students learn a lot, our emergency response learned a lot on what would happen in a real situation and where are areas of improvement. For IMSA, some of the things that they told me that they have learned through doing this is that some of their paramedics, even the newbies or their students, needed to learn to triage a little bit better. So instead of taking what patients go into the ambulance and which ones can be mobile was a big issue over the years that we've done this. So they've been focusing more on how are we going to triage and figure out who goes first, second, and third to the hospitals. Our fire department, some of the things that they have learned that they have shared with us is that when we did this the first time, the chief of the fire department that year basically came to me and said, I pulled our shooting scenario, and he says, it's so out of date that we're having to revise it before your event. So we were actually able to help them with their training as well. So it's been a great partnership for all of us. They are gung-ho in coming back and helping us each year. And then the military, we brought them on this year. Now this year was basically come and play with us and let's see how you can incorporate you into next year. Because when they asked to come and participate, even my out of the box thinking went, I'm not sure where you guys would fit into our scenario. So why don't you guys come, we'll see what we can do and go from there. So the majority of the military were our patients, which was great because typically we used other high school students. We usually separate, 1 year we'll use Northwest Classen high school students as a promoting our programs, trying to get them to come to us. And then the next year is US Grant. So it's kind of a recruitment event for high school students. Well, they can't act out our scenarios as well. So the military, I'm like, well, come and be our patients. And then as you're doing that, you can kind of ID, where can you help us next year? What do you think that you can play a role in? And as we were putting this together, and we were talking about wishing we had doctors, because right now we just have nurses acting as doctors in the ERs, they brought their physician's assistants and doctors to play our doctors in the ER, to give our students more of a realistic role. Because it's one thing to take orders from your instructor or an instructor you know, but this was different. It's a total stranger that you're getting orders from. So, and they're military, so they're used to more mass casualty incidents than we are. So it was great to bring them on this year to have that component. We also had their paramedics or their medics work with the paramedics to help with their triaging this year, since they are taught so much differently with triage because of military. That was a good partnership between them and our paramedics this year. So just bringing them on 1 year, we've learned a lot, and we're still trying to figure out how we're going to implement them again this next year. So what have we learned over the years? Faculty need to know their assignments and room layout to assist students better. We've got people in charge of that just to do that training in the mornings now before we start. Maps of building where departments are, so we got bigger maps to put on our walls, because some students have forgotten where x-ray is, or if we're going to grab another student that may be from another school, because I do partner with other PA schools to bring in nurses if we need more, they need to know our building layout as well. So having a map kind of helps with that. Better student preparation, need walkthroughs. Identify which role students is playing. Are they a CNA, an AUA, a transporter? That was one of the things that some of our helpers had asked, is that a CNA or is that an AUA? So we make bigger signs. Then on the back, it says what duties they can do. So if somebody wants to give them something to do, all they have to do is look on the back of their card to find out what they're capable of doing, especially the high school students that are still kind of shy and won't tell them what they can do. I have a skills list available. That's what I said about being on the back of their cards. Better communication lines between units. We actually have phones in each unit. We make sure that every unit has a phone and that there is phone numbers for that. This year we had a little challenge because some phone numbers got mixed up, but it was a real life scenario, so they had to figure out how to fix it. Available communication between ambulance and ER to make more realistic. We do radios. Our paramedics and our emergency response has loaned us radios for this day, so they can do that as well. So those partnerships help us figure out what we're doing. Yes, it is time consuming, especially creating charts, but we make sure that they're reusable. So every year, everything that I use, I go either from a gunshot wound, we've done a tornado where the gunshot now is a penetrating wound, so I just have to change a few little things to make it workable. Some of our challenges, programs in different spots in the curriculum, so we kind of have to think outside that box each year of what class is going to do what. Involving in health programs in other buildings, the medical assisting and dental assisting have been a little bit of that challenge. We have pulled in our medical office. They're our admitting personnel for the hospital. Faculty support and buy-in. If the faculty is not gung-ho on this aspect, they're not bringing that gung-ho to their students, and that can become a very big issue. If the students aren't taking this seriously because their instructor isn't, then they're not going to have that learning experience. Administrative support is very important. We have to have that administrative support not only for financing the supplies that we're going to need for the day, but to be able to say we're shutting our building down to become a hospital today. We need not only our administration for our building, but for our site, because we have to block off roads for the fire department and the paramedics, because we've got to have an exit strategy for them. So if something real happens, they can leave and get going. So that administrative support, the financial support, all of that is very important. Making sure we have mass casualty protocols with local agencies. If we know what their protocols are, we can work with that scenario. And then get students to fill out our evaluations for more detailed responses. I don't know about you guys, but getting students to fill out evaluations is the hardest things you can ever have done because they don't want to do it. But that's how we learn, is how to improve, is those evaluations. So it takes us a little while to get those students to do that. And then our contingency plans, our weather, or in case of a real life situation, if somebody really gets hurt, what is our contingency plan? Weather, we do this at the end of January. So what happens if we have ice or snow? Knock on wood, and in all the 5-6 years that we've done this, we have not had to cancel because of weather. So we've been lucky. Like I said, knock on wood. Resources is the biggest thing. The Hospital Association of Southern California active shooter drill materials, they have lots of materials there to kind of get people started in something like this. Even our FBI.gov active shooter has scenarios to help. Healthysimulation.com, training.fema.gov, and I will share this out with our people so that way I can share this PowerPoint with you guys as well. And then dhfs.gov. All of these have great scenarios for shooter-based activities. So you might, and this isn't just for healthcare. Depending on what industry you work in, you could actually do something like this in your own building as if something like this would happen and not have the healthcare component even involved. And then of course, for simulation for nursing, we use INAXL's standards of best practice. And then here's some of my references. Questions for anybody?
Hi, Josie. I have a few questions from the chat. Let's see. The first one is from Karen Sneary at Canadian Valley Technology Center. She asked if you, did you have to have additional contracts with the various agencies to do this?
No, I did not. Basically, I invited them to come and sit at the table for my planning. And I start planning this typically August, September time. My first one, we met every month. Now I only meet about every 3 months because we've done it so often. But no, it's more of a verbal contract with them, of them coming to the table on what would they provide and what will we provide.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Don Stevens at Oklahoma City Public Schools. He asked, with all the outside agency involvement, also doing training, how do you ensure that your students' learning remains the focus? Do the other agencies respect that?
Yes, they do. And that's one of the things in our meetings that they're like, what would benefit your students? This is for you. And that's part of the thing with training for the outside entities is it typically outside our building. So we are not really needing anything for our students on the outside. It's when they walk into that hospital that becomes the training for our students. And then they just kind of roll with what we need. I've never had an issue of, well, that's not what we're going to do. It's, what do you need us to do? And that's what they follow.
Excellent. Those were the two questions I had. What, does anybody else have anything for Josie? Scrolling through the chat, I don't see anything.
Okay, my email is here again, and my office number, which comes straight to my email if you leave a message. If you're interested in any information, any additional information, please reach out to me. I'm a 12-month instructor, so I get emails all year. I'm not off for the summer like a lot of people are. So you can reach out to me at any time.
I would like to say, when I gave a short introduction earlier about Josie when she wasn't here, that we're so fortunate to have Josie at MetroTech, and she does so much for our students as our simulation lab coordinator, as well as putting this huge event together, which takes a lot from her, and we know that. She is a registered nurse. She has a Master of Science degree in nursing education, and she was also named the 2019 ACTE Region 4 Post-Secondary Teacher of the Year. So we can see why. She's excellent at what she does, and a real asset to us at MetroTech. Thank you, Josie, for doing this for us today.
Oh, you were more than welcome.